Hello my beautiful butterflies, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Beverley and it's so lovely to see you today. In this video we are going to be talking about 5 misconceptions to do with dressing vintage. So grab that cup of tea, let's get to it. So my last video was me talking about misconceptions that I had when starting to look into becoming a witch and studying and practicing witchcraft. And I really enjoyed making that video, and this week's a bit of a tough one for my health. So I thought we'd have a sit down and a little chat about some of the assumptions that I made around vintage fashion and dressing vintage every day, you know, before I got to it. But before we get to it, don't forget you can click the subscribe button to become part of the butterfly family. We would absolutely love to have you join us, so don't forget to hit that button, leave me a comment and click that like. But let's get to it. So the first misconception I had was that you had to pick a decade that you were going to dress like and stick with that, and that was it. That was your decade. Like, you pick the 50s, that's it, you're stuck in the 50s for the rest of your life. I honestly believe that, because there's a lot of vintage dressers who they just dress a particular decade and they stick with that, and it's their style and it looks immaculate, and I love seeing those people. But I've always loved lots of different decades. When I was growing up, we always watched like old movies, we always enjoyed different eras. My favourites were always like the late 50s, 60s up to like the 1980s. They're my favourite eras for fashion. I just love it. It was like the Wild West has appeared and you could literally wear anything. It was crazy. I love the patterns, I love the colours, I love the whole thing. But I also love the modesty and the cute dresses of the 40s and early 50s. I love that time. But I also love the 1920s. Everyone was like dressing more androgynously. There was a lot of playing with your gender, which people are doing now. Again, it breaks down so many walls. I love it. And I love the 30s. People dressed a lot more modestly and their clothes were just so pretty. So basically what I'm saying is I soon realised that why am I making this rule for myself that I've got to pick a decade and stick with it? Why can't I play around with lots of different fashions? Why can't I mix up vintage and modern? Why can't I just dress in any way that I want to dress? And that's what I love about vintage fashion. You could dress like it's 1876 if you want. I mean, the whole cowgirl aesthetic is a thing that I love. Is that time period? I don't know. I'm not good at time and knowing what time is matched with what. It's not something I'm really good at. But anyway. But I do want to say that if you want to play in different decades, if you want to dress 1960s one day and like it's 2010 another day, do it. Do it. Play around in those times. Play around in whatever you want to wear. There is really no rules. And I was talking about this when it came to witchcraft as well, but also in vintage fashion. You can wear whatever you want. None of this stuff is in fashion anymore. So just wear it. If you want to wear it, wear it. The next one that I had was that you had to be rich in order to afford to dress in a vintage style. And I will say this, most vintage fashion places are expensive. It's quite often I'll get like an Instagram advert and I'll press something because I'm like, oh, that dress is pretty, but then when I open it, it's like £300 and I'm like, what, for a dress? I never leave the house. When am I going to wear such a dress? And I'll probably spill my dinner down me, as I generally do. But there are a lot of places where you can buy vintage clothing quite cheaply. This dress is from Hell Bunny. It's really cute. It's got little hearts and little rabbits all over it. It's so sweet. And this bolero, believe it or not, was thrifted. I think it was like £2 or something. I share a lot here on the channel my thrifting and how I thrift vintage clothes and how I thrift modern clothes and style them to look vintage. That's something I love doing. You don't have to be rich to dress in a vintage style. Now, there are very expensive vintage brands, but there are also brands that are affordable, like Collectif and Hell Bunny, and used to be Lindy Bop, but I think we're all still sad over Lindy Bop. Number 3 is that only skinny people dress vintage. There is this belief in the vintage, even like vintage sellers, but also people who follow vintage fashion, that everybody was skinny in the past, and it is just simply not true. I've been doing a lot of ancestor work, and pictures that I found of my ancestors, they're not skinny. They're bigger than me, and I'm like a size 12 to 14 in the UK. They're all bigger than me. I know quite a few people who dress vintage. I follow them on Instagram and YouTube and all the places, who are plus size, but they dress vintage. There are so many false narratives in this world, and I think a lot of it, when it comes to everyone was skinny, is because a lot of people were just normal size, and so those smaller sizes didn't get bought and didn't get worn as much, and so because of that they've survived. Whereas people who were bigger, who were living their lives and reusing and re-wearing their clothing just got worn out and thrown away or repurposed into something else. So definitely don't think just, you've got to be a skinny person to dress in a vintage style, because it's just simply not true. You can definitely just have a look on eBay. There's plenty of vintage clothing out there that is in bigger sizes, so have at it. The next thing that people often assume is, and including me, is that people in the vintage community, it's because they want to live in that time. Like, there are people who they dress vintage, especially on TikTok and YouTube. They dress vintage, they live in old houses and they've done them up to look like it's the past, or they use like old gadgets and things, and that's fair enough. You carry on, you enjoy yourself. But my house was built in the 1970s. It was last really updated. I mean, we are going to be doing some more updates to the house, which I'll leave a link to the work that we've done to the house so far. But yeah, a lot of the work hasn't been done since the 1990s in the house, and I'm perfectly happy having modern things. We have got a TV, we've got computers and things like that. Like, I don't live like it's in the past. I don't want to live it in the past. And a lot of people, although they like the aesthetic of the past, and so they like dark wood like I do, and they like certain colours and certain palettes and certain looks for their home, we definitely don't want to live in a time where people didn't have as many human rights, etc., as we do now. So, not a thing. And the last thing I want to talk about is vintage dress means vintage values. We get this a lot. I do not have vintage values. My value system is very like centre left, I'd say, centre leftish. I do not have any beliefs that people should be mistreated, enslaved, put down because of where they work or what colour skin they've got or where they moved from. I don't believe in any of that. I don't have any values from the past. I cannot stand anything like that. And thinking that about people who dress vintage was an assumption that I made, and so if you made that assumption, fair enough. You might think that. There are a lot of people of colour who dress vintage. I follow a lot of people on Instagram, so feel free to look through my friends and who I follow on Instagram to find some amazing creators and amazing Instagrammers who dress vintage and are people of colour, as well as in the vintage sewing community. There are a lot of people of colour. I think it's just one of those things that sometimes we make assumptions. And I think it was Dandy Wellington. I'll leave a link to him down below as well. He's an incredible creator here. He's a musician and he lives in New Orleans, and he just fascinates me because he dresses incredibly. Incredibly every day, and I love watching him pick out his outfits and do his little bow ties and suspenders and top hats, and he just looks amazing every day. I love his style so much, and I think he was the one who originally made the slogan vintage style, not vintage values, and that is really important for me. It's important to remember that we don't want to live in the past. We don't want to have those views anymore. We want to move forward. We want to be friendly to people in the LGBTQ plus community. I find that really hard to say. We need like we need a better word. I think just using letters, it's just too much to say. I'm sorry, but it is. And I am a member of that community. I am pansexual and it is Pride Month, so maybe they should roll it out for next Pride Month. It's just the letters thing, just hard to say. Where was I going before I said that? Anyway, we don't want to step back in time like Kylie Minogue. We want to go forwards, and I think being more open with sexuality and race and just opening things up and welcoming everybody of race, class, age, everything is really important to me, and it's important to a lot of people in the community. So let's squish that right now. Squish it. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to head down below and leave it a cheeky little like so I know that you enjoyed it and I can bring much more like this to the channel in future. Also, leave me a comment. I love talking to you guys. Let me know down below if you had any of these misconceptions. Let me know all your thoughts and feelings about what I said, what you think, how you feel on these things. I would love to know more. And last but certainly not least, if you like my content and you like my face, don't forget to head down below, hit that little subscribe button, ring that little bell so you always know when I upload. I'm usually here Mondays and Fridays. My health permitting, I always do my very best to be here with you every week, twice a week. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Take care everyone, and I will see you next time. Bye.